Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, so at this point you have done a little bit of work in Xcode, making your first app with Caleb. In this and the next lesson, we are going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the many features and tools of Xcode. So go ahead and open a fresh project, and I'm going to give you a tour of Xcode, alright? So we'll start up here at the top, and we're just going to kind of make our way down and around, alright? So up here we have our menu bar, and we have here our play button. Okay, so this will run our app in the simulator or on a connected device. I'm just going to click that. And here you can see the status. You can see that it was building and then launching, and now it is running. And we have our simulator, so I'll just pull that over. And yeah, so here is our simulator running the app. Now we can also stop the app by clicking right here. This will stop the running scheme or application. All right, and then over here we can select and change the different simulators that we have available. We've got a whole bunch. Or we can do it on a generic iOS device, or here, if you have a device plugged in, that is where your device would show up. All right, and then like I said, here was our status bar, shows the status of what's going on. If there are any errors or warnings, it will show up here as well. So for right now, this is saying that I have a view in our without any layout constraints. So that label that was just showing that said hello students, it doesn't have any constraints, but that's okay. We're just going to ignore that for now. And that's something that you can do with warnings. You can still build your app. If we had an error, then it would not let us build. All right, and then continuing on, here we have our library. And when you're in the editor, this is the standard editor right here. When you're in the editor, this is going to give you snippets. Okay, so these are code snippets that you can use inside of your app. All right, and some of these are in Objective-C or even C and C++. So if you want to filter it down to Swift, you can go ahead and search for Swift, and then you'll see things like the Swift guard let. So if you're drawing a blank on the syntax for doing a guard let statement, you could search in there, and then that will just drop right in for you and tell you, guide you in what you need to do. So then you can say guard let name equals that optional name optional name else return. Okay, so that's just using the code snippets available right here. All right, so then we have these three buttons right here. These are going to toggle how the editor appears. All right, so this is our standard editor, this first one. The second one is called the assistant editor. And what this is going to do is it's going to split our view right here between two views. So for instance, this is really useful when we're working with our storyboard, and we need to be working with our IB outlets and hooking things up. So for instance, I can control and drag in an IB outlet directly from the storyboard straight into our view controller. And I can say this, welcome label. All right, and then once I'm done hooking things up, then I can go back to the standard editor and then switch back to our view controller. So that's really useful when trying to do that kind of thing. This one here, I don't use as much, and this is the version editor. So if you've been making changes to your code files, and say you break something, or you just want to see what you've changed, maybe you're writing up the notes for a pull request or something, then you can click on this and you'll see the changes. All right, I'm going to go back to our standard editor. Over here, these three buttons allow you to show and hide the different panes. This one on the left shows and hides the Navigator pane. As you can see, that can be hidden and shown. This one on the bottom shows and hides our debug area, which we have down there at the bottom. And this one here shows and hides the inspector pane. All right, so that is our menu bar. Let's come over here to our Navigator pane. And we have a whole bunch of tabs here, all right? We're going to start here in our project Navigator, and this is basically just our whole application in a hierarchical file project structure, just like you're used to in Finder with your regular folders. And here inside we have all of our files and assets that our app needs. Now some of these we're not going to worry too much about, but I do want to go to this one right here. This is the Find Navigator, and this will help us to find things in our entire project. So as your project grows and gets bigger and bigger, this will become super useful to you. So for instance, I can just search for welcome, and this will pop up right here that we have these two results, and I can click right here. And if I were in a different file, it would take me directly to right here. So that's super useful. The next one that we want to look at here is our Issue Navigator. And so we already saw this briefly, but this will show any warnings and or errors that you have in your project, all right? So right now we have that label that doesn't have any constraints, but that's just a warning. And like I said, we can still run it with warnings. Let's make an error. So let's go ahead and say, let name equal Johnny B. And then how would I make an error out of this? Well, what if I try to change it? So name is equal to Jim, okay? So the problem here is that let is declaring name to be a constant, right? And we cannot assign the value in a constant. So we are going to get an error here. And if I try to run this, then it's going to say build failed, okay? And you'll see that it shows up in a lot of places, here, here. So lots of places to kind of really let you know, hey, there's something wrong. And so again, if we were in a different file and we clicked on this, it would take us directly to our error. And sometimes Xcode will be very clear about what the error is. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to understand what they're saying. And sometimes they'll tell you exactly what you need to do to fix it with this little fix button here. And we can do that. We can change our let to a var so that it is not a constant, or in other words, mutable. It can be changed. And we'll say fix. And now everything is honky-dory. We can run it and we are bug-free now. Next up here, we have our breakpoint pane, and right now it says no breakpoints, all right? So what is a breakpoint? Breakpoints are debugging tools, and in their most basic form are used to stop the execution of your code at a specific point. They are actually much more powerful than that, but for right now, that's all you need to know, okay? So you can add breakpoints by clicking anywhere over here in what is called the gutter. And so if you click over here, you'll see that we have this kind of blue ribbon thing right here, okay? So that is a breakpoint. If you click it again, it will be kind of a lighter transparent version. And that means that the breakpoint is inactive. So you could run this and it wouldn't stop here. All right, so let's go ahead and see what it looks like when it's active. And I run this. Okay, so did you see how it popped up, the simulator popped up, but then we jumped back into the code and we have this green line here. And it says here that we have thread 1, breakpoint 1, okay? So the app hasn't crashed. All we're doing is halting the execution of the code. All right, and so since our code runs from top to bottom sequentially, we started up the app where we started out here in view did load, and right off the bat, when we went to declare our variable name, we have a breakpoint, so we stopped here. Okay, and down here, we have some of the things that we can do. What we can do is we can continue program execution, in which case the app would just continue running from this point. You can step over breakpoints and some other things, which we'll go into when we get into the debugging section, okay? So I'm gonna add another breakpoint right here. You can keep adding breakpoints even while you're in the app running. And if I press play here, then it will continue, but it's only gonna continue one line because we have another breakpoint right here. So then we get to this line here. Alrighty, so that's a breakpoint, super useful in debugging, but be careful. For beginners, it's fairly common to accidentally click over here and they don't really know what they just did and added, and they'll go to run their app, and then their app will stop execution as it should with a breakpoint, but they don't know why it's stopping. They think it's crashing. So if that happens to you, then do a quick check over here and see if you accidentally have any breakpoints that you added. And if you need to get rid of them, you can either come up here to debug and you can say deactivate the breakpoints, and that will deactivate them. Or you can just drag them out and they will kind of go poof and disappear. All right, and then you don't have any breakpoints and you can run it and be fine. All right, so I'm gonna run that again. And there we go, now it's running like we would expect. Okay, so continuing on, here we have our standard editor. If you go from one file to another, you can switch between them up here with these arrows here. And then if you want to, you can select files using this way right here. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the editor. You type code in here. All right, so here over on the right, we have our inspector pane. We have two tabs. This is our file inspector, which just has information about whatever file is open. Nothing too important that you'll mess with too often. Over here, we have our quick help, which I use a lot and while I'm coding, because you can click on any of these standard classes or methods or pretty much anything that is Swift Apple documented, and it will show you some of the quick help. It'll show you the summary, discussion, sometimes it'll have little examples, and if that's not enough for you over here in the quick help, then they have a link down here to the official Apple docs, and then you can continue your research here. All right, and then finally, down here at the bottom, we have our debug area. Okay, and on the left, we have our variables view, and on our right, we have our console, okay? So we'll be using our console a lot. This is where things get logged that the operating system wants us to know about or that we want to know about. So I could say something like print name, and then after we change it, I can print it again, print name, and run that. And down here in our console, we have those two values printed out. All right, so that is part one of our tour. In the next part, we're going to take a look at the storyboard and how some of this changes there, all right? So I'll see you in the next one.